Yes, we'll begin with the new topic. That is colligative property. You can see here I've put on the screen colligative property, and very important topic. Okay, from your exam point of view, it's very, very important. You have few colligative property which you need to study, and problems related to that is a sure question for your exam. Okay, so I have told it's very important. Even sometimes the definition of colligative property is also asked, or they ask you how many types of colligative properties are present. So we will start with this. Now let's see what is colligative property exactly. Okay, so now your colligative property, see, it's a property which depends on the number of the solute particles present, irrespective of their nature, present in the solution. That property, if you're measuring, that is colligative property. Okay, the property which depends on the number of the solute particle number irrespective of their nature. Okay, so what kind of nature they are having, that is not important for us. How many are present, that is important. Okay, for that, yes, correct, good. So now here I have taken one example. Actually, it's easy. It becomes easier if you remember this, a daily life example. Just okay, just to connect with this topic, I have taken that example. Okay, then I will repeat this definition once again, then it will get registered for you. See now here, example, I have taken two friends. Okay, imagine there are two friends. Okay, one is little on the healthier side. You can see on this side, he is on to a little healthier side, and one is little thin. Okay, so these two people, now these two friends, after a long time, okay, they want to meet up, and then they are planning to go for a restaurant. Okay, so now when they go to a restaurant, it is obvious that they will order for something, no? So they will order for the snacks or food, whatever it is. Okay, so now when they order, the person, okay, so when the waiter comes and asks them whatever they have ordered, so he will give based on how many people have come. He will not see that this person is little healthy, so I should give him less, and this person looks very thin, okay, so then I should give him little more. It's not like that, no. Now for example, if they have ordered for masala dosa, okay, so now he will not give 4 for this one, okay, the one who is little thin, and 2 for the one who is little healthy. Okay, so based on the nature he will not give. For him, what is important, the count what he has got. Okay, so the count what he has got based on how many people are there, only based on that it will be served. Correct? No, he doesn't see what kind of nature of the customers have come. It is only depending on how many number have come. Okay, so that's a colligative property. In the solution also, so here we are going to measure only the number. Okay, we are not going to count for the nature of it. Mass and everything is not important for us. Okay, so here colligative again. So if you are able to relate now, I said it depends only on the number of the solute particle irrespective of whatever nature is present. Okay, so if you have same number of in one solution, if I have same number of solute particles compared to the another one, then the colligative property value also will become same for them. Okay, so that's colligative property. So you can make a note. Okay, good. Okay, now listen here. See, so what I said, colligative property is the property which depends on the number. Okay, number of the solute particle, it is not depending on the nature. Whatever nature is there, we are going to ignore that, and we are going to take account only of the number of the solute particles. Okay, now when you are measuring colligative property, okay, remember, so like now here you can see animated picture, you can see over here. Okay, so when you are measuring this colligative property, which I said, which is depending only on the number, okay, so we are going to calculate this only for dilute solutions. Okay, we calculate this colligative property for dilute solutions. Okay, so this colligative property calculation could be done only for this. Now why dilute solution? The reason is because here when you are taking a dilute solution, you will have lot of solvent. Correct? No, solvent will be large in number. Agree with me? The solute particles which are there, they will be less. When you have a dilute solution, less number of solute particles and large number of solvent. That means these solute particles are going to be very large, you know. They will be sitting in very large place from one another. These solute particles will be far from one another. Correct? No? So when they are far from one another, okay, there will not be any interaction between these solute and solute. Okay, so then if there is no interaction, then the behavior which is going to be there, no, the behavior is going to be ideal in nature. And you remember that Raoult's law we can apply only for ideal solution, correct? No, so even here we are going to take those kind of solutions only. Okay, only on dilute solutions we can apply this colligative property. Why it is applicable? Because in the dilute solution, your solute particles are very far from one another and there is no much interaction. When there is less interaction, they are more like behaving like an ideal solution. Okay, so whatever heat changes, volume changes, whatever happens, no, that is almost negligible in ideal condition. You can even imagine like students in the classroom. Okay, now if I have a classroom where I have large number of students, okay, then they will be sitting close to one another. Okay, now imagine these circle ones are the students, so they will be close to one another. If they are close to one another, more number of interaction is possible. Okay, so then the class will be like more of noisy and everything, because they are sitting close by. When they are sitting close by, it's automatic, no, that both of them will start talking and then a lot of distractions are there. So due to that distraction, they will not behave in a proper manner. Okay, but if you put students very far from another, like how you were sitting, no, that's almost like an ideal condition. In one bench hardly two people were sitting, correct? No, because of this corona and social distancing. So when there is large number of like social distancing is there, that time what happens, interaction will become very less. So when the interaction becomes very less, their behavior also will be like an ideal solution. Okay, so that is the reason why we take this one dilute solution, because their behavior is almost like a ideal behavior. Okay, far the solute molecules will be clear. No, yeah, that I will come to that. Okay, now here, which concentration terms are we going to take? Okay, when you are measuring this property, we are going to actually take molality, not molarity, because you know, molarity changes, no? It changes with volume, correct? And molality doesn't change, which change in temperature. So yeah, when I am talking about that, yeah, I will come back in detail. I will explain. Okay, now here I'm just doing the intro part. This part is clear now to everyone. What is colligative property? Colligative property means which depends on the number of the solute particle, doesn't depend on the nature. Okay, which doesn't depend on the nature. And then one more thing, what I said is it is applicable for dilute solution. Why applicable for dilute solution? Because in the dilute solution, the particles are very far from one another. So when they are far from one another, interaction is not that much. When the interaction is not that much, they behave almost like an ideal solution. Okay, so then we can calculate whatever we are supposed to calculate over here. Okay, so now we will go for different kinds of colligative property which you have to study. So there are different types. Okay, those are four over here. You can see one is relative lowering of vapor pressure, then we have elevation of boiling point, then we have depression of freezing point, and the last one is osmotic pressure. These are the four colligative property. Again, these are important. Okay, so each one we are going to study in detail. Each and every topic we are going to do in detail. Okay, so let me start with the first one. These are the four. Okay, the list of four. You can make a note. Then I will start with first one. Okay, good. We'll start with first one now. That is relative lowering of vapor pressure. Now this concept is related to what I had done when I was talking about the vapor pressure of solid when they are added to liquid. Okay, so it's the same topic. It is the same thing what we are going to discuss, but then again I will repeat this. Okay, so you can be able to like revise. It will be like a revision for you. So listen properly. We are doing this relative lowering of vapor pressure. So it is extension of this topic itself. Okay, vapor pressure of solids in liquid. This solids in liquids I have done. Okay, so now again I'm revising. Just listen properly. Okay, so now here when you're talking about vapor pressure of solid in liquid, you have a solute which you are going to take as a solid, okay, and adding to the liquid, correct? No, that will be your solvent. So you are going to add non-volatile solid like sugar, urea, and sodium chloride. All these were the example which we have considered, which are non-volatile in nature, means the one which will not vaporize. When you are continuously heating also, they will stay back, okay, and the solvent is the one which will evaporate off because they are volatile in nature. So we are talking about such solution, okay, where the solid is non-volatile in nature and your solvent is volatile in nature. So you are discussing what happens to the vapor pressure. Yes, does this solute particles doesn't contribute. Correct, very good. It doesn't contribute to the vapor pressure. You know, no vapor pressure for this will be zero because they don't come in the form of vapors. They don't have that property in them. Okay, so then let us understand this again in detail. So we have a pure solvent. Initially, we have only the liquid solvent, and you know the surface is occupied only by the solvent molecules. Okay, and as the time passes by, these molecules will evaporate. Correct? No, these molecules will come into the empty space, and then they attain a equilibrium. Once the equilibrium has been attained, then you know that a pressure is exerted by these gases, okay, which is present in the empty space, and that is what we call as vapor pressure. Correct? This is the vapor pressure part because only one kind of a liquid is present and only this liquid will be exerting a pressure. Okay. Now after this, you are adding the non-volatile solute to this. So when you are adding non-volatile solute, what do you observe? When you are adding non-volatile solute, these solute particles will come and get occupied in this space. Okay, here and there they will come and get occupied. So then, if you talk on the surface, some of the places are occupied by the solute particles and some are occupied by the solvent particles. Okay, now the whole surface is not only by the solvent. There is some amount of the solute and there is some amount of the solvent. And you know, solute are the one who doesn't evaporate. Yes, these are not evaporating. They will sit here only and they are blocking the way. Okay, surface area decreases. Very good. Now the surface available, because they are coming and blocking here. Okay, see here, all these are the solute particles. So this much amount of surface is occupied, no? So when this surface is been occupied, the amount of the solvent which can come into this empty space will also decrease. It's like a block for them. When there is blockage, it's automatic that most of them can't cross and go, no? So they will stay there only, okay? So the number of vapors which will be formed will be decreasing. Okay, so then I can say that, yeah, vapor pressure decreases. So when you're talking about the solution, because of this non-volatile solute, because area surface area decreases, the vapor pressure exerted also will decrease. Okay, but then solvent itself will exert the vapor pressure, but number of solvent coming will be less. Okay, now I have taken one example. Suppose that the vapor pressure exerted is 200 by the solvent, okay, and the pressure exerted by the solution over here, once the solution is being formed, that time whatever pressure is exerted by the solvent, then that I will assume as 150. So if you take the difference, how much difference are you getting here? 200 minus 150. Yeah, 50 you are getting, correct, no? So that 50 difference what you are getting, that is called as lowering in vapor pressure. Okay, that is called as lowering in vapor pressure, means how much decrease has happened due to the presence of these solute particles. Okay, because of the presence of this solute particle, how much decrease in the vapor pressure has happened, that is called as lowering in vapor pressure. So if I do here 200 minus 150, I will get 50 as the answer. Okay, so this is lowering in vapor pressure. I have subtracted the total pressure of the solvent minus the pressure of the solution. Okay, so this is lowering. Now with respect to solvent, how much decrease will happen? If I have to calculate compared to the solvent, how much is the decrease, then how will you calculate that? If I have to calculate with respect to solvent, how much is the decrease, and then what should I do? I should take the amount of decrease which has happened, divide by the total quantity. Correct, no? The total quantity, that is the pressure, the total pressure which is exerted by the solvent, that is 200. Then I will get it like this: 200 minus 150 divided by 200. Okay, divided by 200. This is, I am measuring with respect to solvent how much decrease has happened. Yes, very good. Yeah, so 200 minus 150 by 200. Then the answer which I will get will be how much? This will be 50, yeah, divided by 200. Correct, no? Yeah, 1 by 4. Yeah, 0.25. Yeah, answer 1 by 4, 0.25. Okay, so you are able to measure, like, with respect to solvent, how much decrease in the vapor pressure has taken place. Okay, this is called as relative lowering in vapor pressure. Okay, relative terms, when are you using? When you are comparing with something. Okay, with respect to solvent, how much decrease has happened. Okay, with respect to solvent, how much decrease has happened, if you are measuring, that is relative lowering in vapor pressure. I hope everyone is able to get this point. Did you understand whatever I said now? What do you mean by lowering of vapor pressure and what do you mean by relative lowering of vapor pressure? Okay, now with the example I have explained. Later we have to derive in terms of, okay, general terms you should use and then derive it later. Okay, if you want, I will repeat once again. Initially we have a solvent. Solvent exerts the pressure. That pressure I am taking as 200. Okay, imagine that the pressure exerted by them is 200. You added the solute particle. Okay, when you added the solute particle, you know solute particle comes and blocks the way. Decreases the surface area. Okay, so the number of solvent which can come into this empty space also decreases. So this value we got as 150. Okay, our random value I have taken 150, you assume. So now how much decrease has happened? If you want to calculate, you will subtract, no? So here 200 minus 150. I got this as 50 now here. Okay, so that 50 which I have got, okay, that is a decrease which happened. That decrease is called as lowering it. This decrease which has happened, that is called as lowering in vapor pressure. Okay, with the name itself you can understand how much decrease has happened. So 50 decrease has happened compared to the solvent. That is lowering in vapor pressure. Now you are calculating with respect to solvent how much decrease has happened. Solvent value was 200. Okay, so with respect to solvent, if I have to calculate, then I will take that value. So 200 minus 150 divide by the total value, that is 200. Okay, so then you get this value. That is called as relative lowering of vapor pressure. Yes, that means around 25% decrease has happened. Very good, correct. Okay, so this is what it means. That is relative. No, this is a random value which I have assumed. Okay, this is a random value I have just taken for you to understand. So now I will particularly take, here you see, instead of taking now number, you know that total pressure exerted, it's only for the pure solvent. So that is P1 naught. And what will be this when they are exerting for the solution? This is taken as P1. Okay, so this is P1 naught and this is P1. So now we can calculate this. We will arrive a general equation for this. Okay, so generally I can write relative reduction of the vapor pressure. Okay, lowering in the vapor pressure. See now here, how will I write that change? You have seen, no, I have written 200 minus 150. So that is a change, no? So that change, delta P, okay, delta P1, I can write as P1 naught minus P1, no? This 200 minus 150. So 200 we are taking as P1 naught. It is for the pure solvent. And 150 is P1. Okay, that is for the solution. So delta, the change, delta P1, I can write as P1 naught minus P1. No, this will be our lowering in vapor pressure. So if I have to write relative lowering of vapor pressure, what should I do? I should take delta P1 divide by the P1 naught value. Okay, then I will get relative lowering in vapor pressure. Okay, this is how you need to derive now. So now I will come for that derivation part. So now see here. Next, reduction in the vapor pressure, I am writing as delta P1 is equal to P1 naught minus P1. Now you know what is P1 naught value, right? P1 naught and P1 value, P1 value, you know, according to Raoult's law, P1 is directly proportional to the mole fraction, correct? P1 is directly proportional to the mole fraction. So then I can write, remove this proportionality sign and write P1 is equal to P1 naught into X1. Okay, so I have just substituted that P1 here because according to Raoult's law, you know what is P1 value. Okay, so that is P1 naught into X1. So I just substituted here. Now from these two, what is common? P1 naught is common. P1 naught and P1 naught is common. I can take that out. So I can write this as P1 naught. Remaining is what here? 1. Nothing is there means 1 is there. 1 minus X1. Okay. I suppose you are able to understand this. Okay. We wrote reduction in the vapor pressure, how much it is? Delta P1 is equal to the pressure exerted by the solvent minus the pressure exerted by the solution. Okay. And using the Raoult's law, you know what is P1. P1 is directly proportional to the mole fraction, okay, of that component. And you can remove the proportionality sign by putting a constant, that is P1 not into X1. All this you have studied. So same substitution I have done here. Okay. For P1 I have written P1 not into X1. Now you just remove what is common here. Okay. I'll take another ink and show you. See, now here I have P1 not and P1 not as common. So I have just removed it out. If nothing is present, now when I remove P1 not here, nothing is there, means 1 is there. So 1 minus X1. Now what is 1 minus X1 is equal to, according to mole fraction? X1 is a mole fraction of one component. You know X1 plus X2 is equal to 1. So X2, yeah, very good, correct. So 1 minus X1 is equal to X2, no? So I can substitute here. Instead of writing 1 minus X1, I can write P1 naught. This I can write, no? Substitute this value here. So what will I get? Delta P1 is equal to P1 naught into X2. So now this relationship, if you are able to see properly, so that means relative, that lowering in the vapor pressure which has happened, it is saying that it is directly proportional to the mole fraction of the solute, correct? No, and that's true also. You know, the reduction which is going to happen in the vapor pressure will totally depend on the mole fraction of the solute. No, more and more amount of the solute you are going to add, less number of vapors you are going to get. That means more and more reduction will keep happening. More will be the lowering in the vapor pressure. So this relationship, see, mathematically we can actually come to the conclusion of that. Okay, whatever we have seen just now in the experimental part. So just like this, just by taking P1 naught minus P1 and substituting all the value, you get to know that the lowering in the vapor pressure is directly proportional to the mole fraction of the solute. Okay, so more solute you add, more will be the reduction in the lower pressure. Okay, so this is lowering in vapor pressure. Now we will rearrange this equation and write delta P1. I will take this P1 naught down. Okay, that means I will be getting in terms of relative lowering in vapor pressure. Okay, you are calculating in terms of solvent. Okay, with respect to solvent, how much reduction has happened. Then I should divide it by P1 naught, no? So if I divide throughout by P1 naught, what will I get? Delta P1 divided by P1 naught is equal to X2. Okay, this will be the relationship. So that I've just opened and written here. Okay, delta P1 is nothing but P1 naught minus P1. Okay, so same thing we have written here. So this will be the relative lowering. Okay, relative lowering of vapor pressure. I'm just writing as RLVP, relative lowering of vapor pressure. Okay, and this what you have got? This one, the first one which I have written, that is lowering of, this is lowering of vapor pressure. Did you follow now how we came to this conclusion? How we came down to this particular formula also? Till here, is it clear for everyone? If you want to ask anything, you can ask now. Because derivation isn't that important. Finally, the formula is important for you. And understanding the concept is important. And you know, in chemistry, they don't ask you to derive anything. Not like physics. Physics, you need to derive the things. Here, derivation is very less. Okay. Hardly one or few, very few are there. Very few chapters where derivation is asked. Everyone, is it clear? Now I'm asking everyone, is it clear? You have any doubt in relative lowering of vapor pressure? Yes, I'll explain. See, this last step, what I said. First step is clear. No, we have just written the reduction in the vapor pressure which has happened. Okay, delta P1, which is P1 naught minus P1. Okay, then you get this equation. Delta P1 is equal to P1 naught into X2, which says that the relative lowering, the lowering of the vapor pressure has totally happened because of the amount of solute which you have added. Okay, so it totally depends on the mole fraction of the solute. Okay, now next what you are writing, like you are finding out the relative lowering in the vapor pressure. So how did I tell you to find out relative lowering of vapor pressure? So if you want to find the relative lowering, like that value, I will explain with the value what I did that time. See, first value was 200 for the solvent, then we got 150 for the solution, Then I did the subtraction, correct? No, 200 minus 150, I got 50. This was reduction, okay? This was reduction in the vapor pressure, that is lowering in the vapor pressure. Then how did we calculate the, with respect to the solvent, how much reduction has happened? What I did that time, 200 minus 150, or you can directly write 50 divided by 200, correct? No? So when you divide by the vapor pressure of the solvent, you will get what is the reduction which has happened. Okay, with respect to solvent, how much reduction has happened. Then you will get one value. So what we did here, divided by the vapor pressure of the solvent. Okay, so now again here, to calculate with respect to solvent, I need to divide, no? And what is vapor pressure of the solvent? P1 naught. So I divided throughout by P1 naught. Okay, so here delta P1 divided by, I will write in red one. Okay, then you can see here. So here delta P1 divided by P1 naught. And here also divided by P1 naught. Yes. So when I divide throughout, what will be left out? Delta P1, I will get delta P1 here divided by P1 naught is equal to this, and this will cancel. No, so remaining is what? Only x2. Okay, so you will get is equal to x2. This in between which you are seeing, no, that is expansion of this. In between which I wrote, no, delta P1 is what? P1 naught minus P1. This is the same thing. Okay, these two are the same thing. Sometimes you have to write open structure. You can directly write this. P1 divided delta P1 divided by P1 naught is equal to x2. Or I can write open. That is P1 naught minus P1 divided by P1 naught is equal to x2. Now followed? Is it clear? Okay. Now next is, we are writing the same, okay, whatever relationship we have got, no? Yeah, we are writing that in terms of molar mass, okay, molar mass. Using this value, you can calculate the molar mass also, because you know the mole fraction, no? So if you know the mole fraction, then we can elaborate that and then find out the molar mass of that particular solute. So we will see how to do that. So we have this equation now with us. Delta P1 divided by P1 naught, or you can write like this also, P1 naught minus P1 divided by P1 naught is equal to mole fraction. You know what is mole fraction of the solute is equal to, right? Mole fraction of the solute, how can I write? X2 I can write as the number of moles of the second component divided by total number of moles, no, of all the component. Now here we have only two component, that is 1 and 2. So I can write this as N1 plus N2, no. So I can remove this mole fraction x2 and substitute in this way, N2 divided by N1 plus N2. Okay, so you see further we have done that substitution just by changing that. You can see here, okay, right below this. This will remain same. Only thing what I've changed is x2. Okay, x2, that is mole fraction of the solute, can be written as number of moles of the solute divided by total number, sum of total number of moles of all the component. Okay, here sum of all the components. Okay, so that I have substituted here. Okay, now this colligative property we are calculating for which type of solution? I said dilute solution. Correct? No, I told you this calculation is done for dilute solutions. So when you are taking dilute solution, the number of solute particles which are present, no, the number of moles of solute particles in the whole solution, that is going to be very, very less. Yeah, they are very few compared to the number of moles of the solvent. So when they are very less, you can ignore this, okay? This value can be ignored compared to, it's like if you are having 1 lakh, compared to that, this rupees or 2 rupees are nothing, no? So like that only it is, okay? So it is almost negligible, okay? Their value when you are just counting the number of moles of solvent and the number of moles of solute in very dilute solution, okay? The number of moles of solute is very less, so we can ignore them, okay? So we are going to ignore this number of moles in the overall solution, okay? So in neglecting this N2 in the denominator, then what will be left out? This whole thing will go out, no? This whole thing will go out. So what will be remaining? delta P1 naught minus P1, okay, that is, sorry, P1 naught minus P1 divided by P1 naught is equal to only this N2 and N1 will be remaining. Yeah, it is there, but then what we are seeing is they are there, but compared to them they are very less. So then you are getting value as 0.00 something, which you can ignore. Okay. Yeah, this is almost like your, yeah, in physics also you have few derivations where you have to ignore. So that is why we are ignoring this. Okay, it's not that they are not present, they are present. But then when you compare with the large quantity, this appears to be as nothing. No, see, now it's like if a person is a millionaire, for him compared to that money, 1-2 rupees are nothing. Okay, so that is what happens when huge amount is there. In comparison to that, the little amounts are there, no, that appears as nothing, so you ignore them. Okay, because it doesn't make much difference. Got the point? No, this I think somewhere I've told you also, like if you have 1 million in your bank account, and from that imagine 2-3 rupees have gone out, will it make much difference in the final balance sheet? Will it make much difference? It won't make much difference, correct? Huh? So that is what is happening here also. Much difference you are not able to see. So you can ignore this. Okay. In comparison to that, you can ignore this. So N2 is ignored. So you are left out with N2 divided by N1. Okay. Now what is number of moles actually? N is number of moles. No. Number of moles is nothing but a weight divided by molar mass. No. Or mass divided by molar mass. So I can write here N2. Instead of N2, I can write as the weight of the solute divided by molar mass of the solute whole divided by N1. I can write as weight of the solvent divided by molar mass of the solvent, M1. Okay, so I have just substituted here. When you rearrange this, your equation will come out like this. Okay, W2 will stay up. This M2 will come down, no? And then this M1 will come up when you rearrange and write. M1 will come up, remaining down will be in the denominator W1. Okay, so this will be the equation which you are going to get in terms of molar mass and mass. Okay, this will be your final equation. So this can be used to calculate the molar mass of that particular solute which you have added. Okay, so that's how relative lowering helps you to find out the mass. So this equation becomes important for you. Okay, this last equation. You got know how we have arrived at this final equation. I have just changed over here. Okay, N is nothing but number of moles. Okay, moles is nothing but mass by molar mass. If it is for second one, that is for solute. Okay, so I have written for W2 by M2. And 1 is for solvent. So W1 by M1. I have just rearranged them, and then finally you end up getting this equation. Okay, yes. Now quickly note down this. And you can explain each and every term here. What does W2 stands for? It is mass of the solute. W1 is mass of the solvent. M1 and M2. M1 is molar mass of the solvent. M2 is a molar mass of the solute.